Today we've been joined by Terry from Blue Abroad. If you don't know Terry, does a lot of Carlton content and has a lot of good people on and does some very good work. Terry, thanks for coming on.
Cooper, absolute pleasure. How exciting. The two worlds
No,
collide.
Absolutely, worlds do collide here. Now, Terry, what got you into YouTube content, in particular at the AFL side of things?
I think it was a twofold. Number one, I was living overseas and wanted to just stay in touch with the game. And then number two was probably just I noticed a lack of content. I mean, we had at the time, you'd sort of watch a game and get to Monday night, watch 360 on the couch. You know, your team gets spoken about for a couple of minutes, and then that's kind of it. I'm a big fan of, fan channels in Europe and the US, and I think that's probably what led me down the path of creating content myself.
But now, Carlton, Terry, they've put you through the highs, they put you through the lows. Right now, you're living in a high. What's it like being a Carlton fan?
It's a good question. What is it like being a Carlton fan? It is, I think, it's been a great preparation for life, because it's just taught me that you're not just going to be handed a successful team or a successful life. You got to do it the hard way. You got to go through the mistakes. You got to learn the hard way and go through the failures. I think if you asked a Carlton supporter 30 years ago, what's it like being a Carlton supporter, they would have said, oh, it's just too easy. But I think my generation and the generations after me have to learn to be humble. And we can't get too arrogant, because we've got nothing to really fall back on.
It's very true. So do you have a particular favourite player at the club right now?
I love Jacob Wiedering. I think he's I used to probably lean towards the more offensive types, like, the Charlie Curnow, and I still love Charlie, but something about Jacob just being reliable. I think also a bit underrated in the comp. It's pretty wild that he hasn't found himself an All-Australian blazer yet. But yeah, love Jacob. Love young Corey Durden, who I sponsor.
Yeah.
Jacob
Wiedering. So it's very coincidental that this is the week we're doing this, and this is the week you brought up Jacob Wiedering, because you might have scratched your head a little bit when you saw the Sam McClush trying to say that my Saints are trying to send him this long deal.
Well, I mean, I have my thoughts on that. Do you think you can nab him from us? Do you reckon he'll make the switch?
I don't think he'll make the switch. No, I think the money terms are a bit ludicrous for anybody, Terry. I'm of belief, anyone that's getting offered or rumoured to get offered that type of money is just not worth that for anybody. You could potentially stuff up your salary cap if they do that. But then in saying that, they say about, the contracts, going up in length now, like the 1.5 might be the new norm, they say, for the big name players, but I still think it's a bit ludicrous. I mean, but if you want to price someone out of the club that doesn't look like he's going to leave, I mean, you got to throw a Hail Mary, I guess.
I reckon there might be a bit of truth to that. I think they might think old mate Steve Silvani's just making sure that we pay top dollar for his prize recruit, because he did ultimately pick Jacob Wiedering in that draft. So
that's what I agree with you. Like, I was speaking to some people recently that are like, oh no, it's not going to happen. And all that stuff. I'm like, yeah, well, Sauce was at Carlton. They don't have the greatest relationship. So no, I would believe that he'd probably be doing it to try and make Carlton pay more, even if he knows that he's not going to get him.
Yeah, well, I think we need more of it. You should ask clubs. You should ask the question of clubs. I think even in draft time, do you remember when nobody bid on Nick Dacos and just sort of let Collingwood take him? I mean, I think that's a bit crazy. You should ask the question and force clubs to pay up for what they want.
Exactly right. Well said. I'm the same. The Collingwood in that example are going to match it clearly. So I don't know what number it was, Terry, but it should have just been from the start. Pick one onwards.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. Are they trying to be polite, be nice? I don't know.
It's like they're not trying to stuff up future deals between the clubs. But then also, I do think, though, I don't know who the club that had pick one that year off the top of my head, but I think it's something to do with, if you pick one, you get like a $10,000 NAB thing, I think, or something at the time. That I wouldn't be shocked if that's actually why. And then they get, I suppose they might not like the pressure, though, of being pick one as well. But then you got the money side as well. I'm assuming there's something to do with that.
I hope one day we find out.
Absolutely, because obviously best player in the comp, and yeah, it'd be pretty interesting why they didn't. Now, Corey Dern, you mentioned him about being a player sponsor. Terry, how did that opportunity come about? And what kind of made you want to do something like that?
Yeah, I think just getting involved with the club a little bit more where I can. I was familiar with the players. I mean, I think every club does a player sponsor or some sort of a program like it. So yeah, I saw it. Always wanted to have a player that we could link up with from when they were drafted and sort of follow their career. So I remember the draft when Corey was taken. There was a bit of talk about, do we take James Rowe or do we take Corey Durden? And did a really big preview with Pommy. And once I did that, I realized Corey Durden's the one. Eddie Betts was leaving the club, so we needed another small forward for the future. And yeah, fortunate enough to get Corey when he was drafted, and been following him ever since. And it's cool. You get to meet him and see
Yeah,
him develop now and meet his family. It's he's a really good kid. Well, he's not a kid anymore, but he's a really good guy.
for sure. I mean, and it's really interesting with player sponsorships because, depending if AFL and AFLW are now starting to do that, Terry, as well. I don't know if you've noticed that. And I've actually done a few through some other clubs, not St Kilda. So I've actually had some at the AFLW level at Essendon, Hawthorn, and Melbourne. And, it's just been really good to, build those connections, as you mentioned, even more. And even without that, to build connections through other clubs, I think is another good thing to, get known a little bit more as well.
Yeah, I had Charlotte Wilson when she
Oh,
was at
yes.
Carlton, and yeah, unfortunately, she left the club. And I
Mm,
mean, I sort of fell in love with the AFLW program at Carlton. I loved the girls that were playing, and then we had a massive exodus over a couple of seasons. And if
mm,
I'm honest, it probably left me feeling a little bit jaded about the program. I kind of lost faith in what was going on and who was heading it and coaching it. And I haven't got a player sponsor for the AFLW at the moment, but
mm.
if we can get some stability there, I think I will jump back on.
That's fair. Yeah, I actually got to meet Charlotte Wilson coincidentally when she was at Melbourne last year. Then within a day or two later, because that trade period was going on back then, she's at Melbourne at the BNF. 2 days later, poof, off to the Suns.
Yep. No, it's I think that's just part of the AFLW. At this point in its inception, it's still early. Like, it's still in its first 10 years, so you're probably going to see a
Yep.
little bit more of that player movement, especially with you got new clubs coming in. You got plenty of clubs. You're making money, but you're not making as much money as you could elsewhere. So why wouldn't you jump at the opportunity to play more footy and earn some more money playing it?
That's right. Now, a very popular player, I feel like Carlton now, especially off his finals form over the last year or so. Terry, a former Saint and a former Docker, Blake Acres. He's stepping up in the big moments, and I've been saying since Blake was at St Kilda that he could actually be better than what the outside noise is saying he'd be. And he was really dominant, mainly at Freo. He was a bit inconsistent at St Kilda in terms of playing different positions, forward, wing, midfield, etc., half back. And then at Fremantle, he kind of, settled on the wing, and then Fremantle lowballed him, and then you picked him up on a small deal as well. I think it was a 3-year deal at the time. Must be loving how he's delivered.
Well, you know what it goes to show? It's really interesting to hear what you said there when he was at St Kilda, sort of played it in a few different positions, bit of forward, bit of mid, bit of back. We
Mm,
now see him, all the experience that he gained moving positions at St Kilda and obviously Freo as well. He does everything. He goes back, he reads the play, he goes forward, kicks goals, he plays on that wing, he goes inside midfield at stages as well. And I think there's something to be said for holding belief and holding firm
mm.
in bringing a player. I mean, I don't remember him too much at St Kilda, but why did he leave in the end? Was it just you wanted more from output and you weren't getting it, or what happened?
Well, it was literally they wanted to get Brad Hill from
Oh,
Freo when he was contracted, and his manager, I think it's the same manager as Blake Acres, just wanted to take him out so they could get St Kilda could get Brad Hill in. Which I said at the time, getting Brad Hill was obviously at that time in his All Australian form was fantastic, but not at the expense of Blake Acres. I think it was Blake Acres and like a first round pick and everything like that. I didn't want him gone. They forced him out, and because he was going back home at that time, it's like he wasn't looking at going home, and that was just probably a convincing factor. And plus, to be honest, when you say you don't want someone, I don't know why you would want to stay.
I mean, I think about it now. I mean, everything's a what if, but imagine Bradley
Mm.
Hill on one wing and Blake Acres on the other wing. That's pretty lethal.
It absolutely would be. Two of the best at it at the moment. And I mean, you wouldn't have to be playing fringe type players or scrambling, for options or rotating it each week because you don't need to rotate those two. They can stay
No,
every week.
no. He's been. I mean, I don't have a high expectation for what Blake does other than just do his role, but I really think right now we're at the end of round 9 going into round 10. I genuinely believe he would be top 5 in the BNF right now, like one of our best players for the season.
I agree with that. Obviously, now you mentioned earlier too about Charlie Curnow, another great season. They've been winning a few Coleman medals. Can he keep doing this at this level for the whole way through? Because at this track, he's going to win a fair few more Coleman medals.
Yeah, what I find interesting about Charlie is how the narrative changes. I mean, he misses nearly 3 seasons of footy, and then I think the pressure sort of falls off him. He wins 2 Colemans in a row, and then all of a sudden, this weird narrative around he gets too many free kicks comes out. He hasn't had many free kicks in the last 4 to 6 weeks. I think almost because of it. I actually think where he'll develop and get better and evolve and mature as a player is when he's not kicking 81 goals in a year, maybe 60, but he's setting up his teammates, getting his teammates involved. This is the first year he's been in the leadership group, so he'll adapt to that. I don't know if he'll continue to kick more goals as what he has already and win more Colemans. I'm more focused on winning a flag, and if that means a little less goals, a little bit more of an even spread, a little less reliance on one player, then great. But I mean, he's a star. I think every club in the competition would want him in their forward line.
And so, absolutely, you should. And if you don't, well, you're a bit insane. Now, the name Blue Abroad, Terry. How did you come up with that name for the channel?
So what? That's a really good question because a lot of people will assume, like, will say to me, "Oh, well, you're not abroad, so what does it mean?" Well, Blue Abroad is essentially blue, navy blue, and abroad is not just from the standpoint of outside of Australia. The term abroad just means a wide-ranging area. So Blue Abroad just means we are blue. We are everywhere, all over the world. That's kind of what it was. You got to kind of be careful with using Carlton or using the word blues or navy blues in because especially once you start monetizing and things like that, you can get yourself into some trouble. I've got a legal background, so that helps. But yeah, that was kind of it. I wanted to have something that was Carlton-ish related, but not something that would get me in some legal trouble.
That's fair. Now, obviously, this year in particular, that I've noticed you've expanded to doing a weekly podcast with a few other guys, including Jake from Saints TV and Swoop Luke. How did you guys come about with that idea to kind of link your channels together? Because it seems to go pretty well so far, and with a rotating guest too.
Yeah, so we had a show on the Tuesday night, which called the Jumper Punch. We then moved the show onto its own channel, so they run their main show on their own channel. So that just kind of meant, we had Tuesday night free, and I didn't really have much room for creativity on the channel. Then we moved the Jumper Punch, and then I saw on StreamYard they have this new feature where you can multi-stream a show if you wanted. So I thought, oh, hang on a minute, I've always wanted to do content and collaborate with other creators. And so I get the opportunity to do a live show that's streamed to 4 different YouTube channels or Facebook pages at once. I'm like, that could be cool. So yeah, just got in touch. Jake was down, Luke was down. So it's the 3 of us, and then we sort of rotate that 4th guest. Yeah, I mean, it's a bit of fun, bit of banter, gets a bit emotional. We get a little bit, I got triggered this week big time. But yeah, it's a bit of fun.
What was it like giving Jake the hosting role this week? He obviously part of a bet, I think it was the week prior.
Yeah. So we had a little wager that if the Hawks beat the Saints, then Jake would need to host and do a monologue. So yeah, we did that. I was saying on the show, it's a bit of a stitch up though, because I still had to push all the buttons and produce in the background. It wasn't while Jake still hosted. But yeah, look, it's a bit of fun. It's something, just see where it takes us. Yeah, and like I said, it's for me, it's good to do something and talk about something else other than Carlton. I love the Blues and I can talk about them every day, and I do, but it's also good to get the perspective from outside of Carlton.
That's fair. Now, when you're roaming the streets, Terry, more in particular non-Carlton games or AFL games, do you get noticed pretty recognized pretty often, and how do you go for that?
Um, when I'm not, oh, I mean, sometimes. I mean, if somebody is aware of the channel and they've been watching for years, I'll say hello, and I think probably more so at Carlton games is where I'll bump into people that will say hello and maybe get a photo. I'm really fortunate that I started doing content when I was like 27, so I'd already built some skin in the game of life, and I sort of had done some work on figuring out who I was.
Mhm,
Made it. I mean, I'm a humble guy from humble beginnings, and I think that's the dangerous part about content creation and creators. I mean, you see a lot of them; they start so young, and they lose a sense of who they are because you sort of you got to figure out what your voice is and who you are as a person, and you're doing that while creating content, and then you change. But sometimes you create an audience being someone, and I
mm,
see it all the time. People get stuck having to act as that character when
mm,
they're not that person. And so, yeah, when I started doing the content, the big thing for me was, I'm not an influencer type. I'm not some celebrity guru. I'm not an expert. I'm a fan. I love the blues. I love talking about the blues, and I ask questions and I create discussion. And I think that works for me. I'm not trying to be an expert. I think there's too many people out there even in the mainstream that pose as experts. And so I just think where we can change media is to change that little bit there and generate discussion more than tell people how it is.
mm. For sure. Yeah, it's yeah, as you said, yeah, some people, they play this character and it can work well for some from views point of view. But like I've kind of noticed these days lately, having the views is great, but I would rather all day, every day, have a consistent amount of guests on and have less views and then just have, say, X amount more views just for controversial comments or,
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah, and I mean, you learn along the way. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, I say what I've said, having made the mistakes and learned the lessons. I mean, I've said some things on camera that inappropriate and probably disrespectful to some of the players. And you sort of learn. You watch your content back. You sort of assess like, okay, that's not really what I want to be, and how I want to represent myself. And you learn. So it's a hard game because you're on the internet, and this is a savage world. The internet is a savage place, and you sort of you put yourself out there, you slip up, you get called out for it, and then you have a choice. You either improve from it or you don't. And so it's a tough game. It's a really difficult game. But yeah, like I said, I think I'm grateful that I started a little later in life rather than at 16 or 17.
Mm, that's very good advice too, for sure. Now, is there any particular name in terms of Carlton that you would love to get on the show in terms of it could be a player, could be a coach, could be a CEO, president? Is there someone that you're aiming to get, Terry, that you haven't had so far?
Vossi. So I've chatted with Luke Sayers. He's come on a couple of times. We've done Brian Cook. I would love to do a sit down with Michael Voss. That would be one. I mean, the players. I love talking to the players. Um, I really do. I enjoy it, but I like the high level side of the game. I
Yeah.
like the seniority. I like the administrators. I like talking to them. Because I think players can only tell you so much about the game. It's a process driven sport. They know what they've got to do. They've got to tick the boxes, get their recovery in. If
Mm,
anything, when I talk to players, I like to talk and humanize them a little bit more and not try and grab a headline. But yeah, I think I'd love to talk about Michael Voss and his philosophies on leadership, on man management. He's gone through failures and struggles and how to overcome them. And I think these are the more important conversations than what we see at the moment.
Now, this may have just been answered, so it could be someone that you just mentioned, but is there a particular dream interview that you would love to do? It can be someone outside of Carlton, someone in the AFL, just someone from another world. Is there anyone that if you could get them, no matter how unrealistic you think it may be, is there someone that you're like, I just want them, I don't care how, as long as it happens?
I've got a couple. I would
Yeah.
say, I mean, Michael Jordan for sure. Kobe Bryant would have been amazing, but obviously he's not with us. Robbie Lyle, founder of Us AFTV, would love to. All in good time. I'm pretty confident that'll happen at some point in my life.
Mm.
Yeah, I think there's a couple. What about
No,
you?
no. Oh, that's a good one. if you were talking footy, you could raffle a few names. Oh, if you didn't know, a lot of people know that I love WWE. So to be any form of wrestler you could possibly think of, literally anyone. If you want to give me a particular name, Roman Reigns, who's the best, and then The Rock. Obviously, you know who The Rock, Dwayne Johnson is. So those two. But then again, you talk about realism and that. But from an AFL point of view, sorry, go on.
What would you ask The Rock? What would be the name you want to ask him?
Well, obviously he called himself the People's Champion, which he is, and he does a lot of great, charity work outside of wrestling, and obviously does all these movies and stuff. But in the moment, me being a wrestling fanatic and him in the WWE a little bit at the moment, he's now calling himself the final boss. So I would ask him about, is he the real final boss? A bit of wrestling chat. A wrestling fanatic, as I said. So it'd be mainly wrestling related stuff.
Yeah, fair.
But so what was the question? So from football side of things too, Terry. The dream one would be Nick Riewoldt. I mean, let's just say I have tried. Not much luck, but it's Nick Riewoldt, and obviously he's doing some stuff in America at the moment, coming back and forth. So yeah, it'd be very. I have met Nick Riewoldt a fair few times. I do remember, Terry, and I don't think no one really knows this. Was in, when they do the captain's run and they do it at Marvel, and they do all those questions that year. A long, long time ago, in like 2014, 16 range, actually got invited to that captain's run. Nick Riewoldt, there was a fair few St Kilda people there. There might have been like 30 odd maybe from St Kilda and some from other clubs. And I was literally the front and center poster person, if you will, with Nick Riewoldt. Like I was always the one at the front of the photo with him. I would chat to him at the time because I'm at the front. And when we're walking around and that, it was pretty cool.
That is awesome. Yeah. Yeah, he's a champion. You know what I've noticed lately? We do a show called The Ratings on the channel with Pommy, and we look at the players' heat maps and look at all their stats. Harry Mackay is starting to bob up with the kilometers that he runs in a game, and he starts getting towards like 14.8, 14.7, which is ridiculous. And for the first time, I'm starting to say to myself, I mean, first of all, he's not Nick Riewoldt, but he's the first. I mean, what I remember about Nick Riewoldt was his running ability, and he used to run his opponents into the ground. And I'm like, well, Harry started to take a little bit of that and add that to his game. I never thought I'd see a forward move like Nick Riewoldt, but I think we're starting to see it a little bit in Harry.
No, he's doing very well. And I mean, Terry, I know it's a bit different because you're not the individual getting scrutinised here, but with Harry getting scrutinised all the time, Matthew Lloyd was one. I know a lot on that show and Footy Classified would always, carry on a bit about, his goal kicking and stuff like that. And he has those games early in the year where he wins you the game or heavily contributes to that. And now he's doing it all year and you're not hearing a peep out of him now.
Yeah. You know what it is? I mean, we have this fascination with the moment. And for whatever reason, I feel like we don't assess the game and we don't assess football as a journey. I mean, Harry is going to have a long career. He's probably at the halfway point of it now, maybe second. Let's start the second half of his career. And so you're going to have ups, you're going to have downs. And for whatever reason, we were just trying to, declare that he just can't kick. And this is it. And this is Harry. And it's like, well, he'd had pretty good lead up to last year. Last year was probably just overall a down year on his confidence and his form. But like, it's not the end. It's not the end result. I mean, it's a bad year. He's going to have touch wood. Hopefully he plays for 15 years, but, always found that fascinating that, we were praising him every year. Last year was the first year that he had a bit of a down patch and a plateau. And, I mean, even Carlton fans, like we had people coming on and asking to trade him. It's just, yeah.
It's interesting. I know the whole story of that with Mackay with Max King, obviously not having his greatest year, but obviously, I still don't like a lot of people, a lot of people now, and I heard Jake mention on the show this week, people told him to say trade him. I think that is one of the most stupidest calls you can make. Why would you trade? Well, they call people the Rolls Royce. I don't know why you would trade him. Like, I just don't think it makes sense. You trade him for what? A first round pick that potentially might not work. You're hypothetically speaking. Max King's proven when he's on, he's clearly on. I would never trade him at all. I don't care what form slump he's in. I wouldn't bother.
Yeah, I mean, Max is going to be fine. It's just hard right now because he's still coming in. I mean, Harry and Charlie really started playing consistent footy not until year 5, year 6, maybe
Mm.
even year 7. I mean, Max will be fine. It's just kind of you're just kind of going to stick the course. But look, it is frustrating in the moment because you have to watch him learn. And you have to watch the inconsistencies, and you have to sit through it. But I think, I mean, for everyone that would say, this is how I react and this is how I respond when someone says, I'll trade Harry. I'm like, all right, which kid in the draft at which pick is going to be better than Harry? Because you're not going to trade someone like Harry or Max King unless you know, for a draft pick or a player, unless you know that that draft pick or that player will give you a similar, if not better output than Harry or Max King. So it's like, what are you talking about?
I know,
Yeah.
it's exactly, if from a trade point of view, what would you get out of it? And like you said, out the front, and would you be able to get someone if you traded him to get, say, a player that might be a certain draft range? Yeah, I don't like it, and maybe a little bit different to Harry McKay here, but Max King's service towards him in the 50 is just bombing it, shank kicks, floaters. Harry's getting all these better deliveries. St Kilda this has been probably their biggest problem, is their ball use into the 50 is just hack kicking it and hoping. And Max King, a lot of the time, does get double and triple teamed. It's like that makes it harder. And then your kicking's worse delivery wise. No forward could do well, let alone Max.
I'm glad to hear you say it because we also have the same problem. I think most clubs probably complain about it, but yeah, we're the same. We haven't even figured out how to kick the ball consistently to Harry or Charlie. Harry's unique because he's got incredible contested mark ability. You can bomb it and he can still take a contested mark. And this is where I think Carlton haven't even scratched the surface. Like when, hopefully I'm saying when, and if not when, but when they learn how to kick the ball efficiently inside 50 to the players on the lead, I think we're going to be very hard to beat. There's two of them down there. We're very blessed. We haven't figured them out yet, even though they've won Coleman medals, which is scary. And so I think if we can learn that art of how to enter the ball inside 50 efficiently, I think it'll make us a force.
Absolutely, it should be. Now I'm going to take you back down memory lane, Terry. Last year in the prelim final against Brisbane, obviously that terrific start in the first quarter. How were you feeling in that moment? Did you go the early crow like a lot of either footy fans or Carlton fans did?
How could you not? How could you not? No, it was I think the build up, like we'd beaten Melbourne, it was so special. You kick I always say, like, when you're away, you got to kick the first couple, you got to nullify the home crowd. So when we kicked 3, I thought good start. When we kicked 4, I thought even better. When we kicked the first 5, I thought this is what it's going to take to beat Brisbane away. And quarter time I was so excited. Didn't end up going our way. Also because, it would have been against Collingwood the week after. That would have been great for footy. But I don't think, if you look back now, I mean, we took so long to make finals, and then the first final series we make, we're in a prelim. So we almost skipped the queue. We weren't ready. That's the truth.
How was it, though, throughout that game where you have that lead and then blow it? Like, you're getting eliminated, Terry, but then you're going out probably the worst way possible.
Yeah, look, it was tough, but I wasn't angry. They just went for it. We'd played every game in the final series, no break. We'd been through so much in the season with the way that we started, and just before we played the Gold Coast Suns, we were in the dumps, and so no one expected the second half of the season to happen. For us, it was just another year of Carlton, so much hope and disappointment, and we didn't think we'd play finals. So there was a bit of gratitude. Like, yes, we were up by 5 goals, and yes, we let it slip, and the Lions ended up winning. But the scenes after the game were the most powerful because for the first time ever that I can remember, the boys lost, and the fans stood there, stayed there, and clapped them off and like appreciated them. It was a really powerful moment. So you kind of got to humble yourself to the game. I mean, everyone wants to win a flag, but you kind of got to appreciate the journey to get there. And so I think it was a unique experience, being proud of them after letting slip a 5-goal lead.
Yeah, I mean, a different story though, similar type of things where you have a lot going on is when Saints made the elimination final last year. You know, you're so excited. You know, you're looking forward to that game, and what happened in the game happened. But it was really the morning of, and this sad topic of what Tim Embry was going through. And like at that time, I remember getting up, and the first thing I saw on my phone was, you know, that Tim's withdrawn for personal reasons. I'm like, crap. And you know, honestly, the whole way through, from that moment to even being at the game, you know, I didn't. Oh, it's not that I didn't care about the result. I clearly did. But I was more worried about how Tim was that entire time, and that just, I'm sure a lot of people would say they just hoped he was fine, and thankfully, you know, he is at the moment and doing well for himself. But yeah, I was just hoping he was okay. I didn't care about the result to a degree, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, that was tough, and there's no doubt that, you know, the playing group, I mean, that's your brother. You know, they go
Mm,
through in the preseason, they work their ass off. That would have been really tough. But I
yeah,
mean, I don't know. I don't know if it's because you know, working a little bit with Jake, but I have a bit of a spot for the Saints. I you know, when we play against each other, you guys always seem to play your best footy.
mm.
There's just a little something there with the Saints. I don't know. I don't know. You're a Saints man, so maybe you can answer this better than what I can. But when I watch them at the moment, I find myself saying, do they believe? Because I see all the pieces there, and it's like you don't
Yeah.
take the game on and win it. You just sort of you defend really well, and that's an important part. I've watched a couple of games this year, and I'm like go. Like, what are you all waiting for? Like, all your pieces, I think, are there. Maybe they just need a little bit more experience and a bit more belief. But I thought you had it early in the season when you beat the Pies. I'm like, all right, here they are. They've arrived. And then, you know, for whatever reason, it just looks like there's a drop in confidence. Do you know what's going on there?
Yeah, it's a great question, Terry. You mentioned the ball movement, and I agree with you. They always stop, slow, sideways, backwards, try and switch it a lot. Um, they did try one game, I think, I can't remember what game it was, and they got slammed. They tried from the first quarter. I don't know what game it was. I think it was an interstate game. Might have been the Giants, and they kept trying it and trying it, no matter what. Like they were doing it, no matter what the game situation was. And they, because their ball use isn't good. We're talking about hack kicking it in 50. They just kept stuffing it up from turning it over from basic skill errors too, and it just backfired. And never since then, I haven't seen it at all. At least not, you know, maybe one rare one here and there, but not properly. And yeah, it is frustrating. I think 5 games under 10 points or less, and I think 4 of those 5 we've lost by under 6 or less. So, you know, you could flip it a little bit either way while playing inconsistently and could have been on the better side of the win-loss column in those 5 games. Um, I know people say these excuses, but injuries, I know injuries happen in every club, but when you're a team that doesn't have strong depth in your lineup, losing Crouch, Higgins have been that suspension. Don't get me started on that. Butler, Howard and Webster at the suspension. Hunter Clark's been injured into the last few weeks. Mason Wood had that horrendous knock in round 2. Liam Henry. You know what I mean? Like, you take out a lot of, say, maybe 7 or so guys out of any team's best 22, and your depth isn't great. It's going to struggle, and it's been exposed. Yeah. But then again, with that happening, you've had these tie losses. So, like as you said, you do have belief. Like, if you have your full team there and you play properly, it's on, like the Collingwood game.
No doubt. Yeah, no doubt about it. We're feeling it at the moment, although I think our depth is holding up. At the time of filming this, we've got, I think, 13 blokes on the injury list, and 8 or 9 of those guys, I would say, if they were available, they would be playing. So it's just tough. It's such a tough sport. We asked them to defend for 4 quarters, 200 plus pressure rating for 4 quarters. We asked them to, you know, 666, generate exciting play and kick 100 points in a game. And it's just a tough one. You almost, you have to expect there to be injuries.
For sure. Now, obviously, the Swans this week, Terry, how are you feeling heading into the SCG clash tomorrow night?
I'm confident that we're capable, but obviously the Swans at the SCG, they're 8-1, best team in the comp right now, form team of the comp, 151%. I don't think you can be going as good as what the Swans are right now. Or I guess they could be 9-0, but yeah, I think it'll be a good game. We've had a really interesting stretch. So it went GWS, Geelong, Collingwood, Melbourne, and now Sydney. So I think we're playing 5 of the best teams that the comp has. So we've had a nice tune-up against each team, and we lose Jack Martin with a calf injury yesterday, and that's disappointing because he's an important player. But mate, you got to just be up for it,
It's very true. I mean, and then it's hard to think that you mentioned about Sydney being 8-1, and that loss was to Richmond.
Wow, it was too. That was at the MCG, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, make sense.
I know. And then we beat Collingwood, and then we lose to Hawthorn and teams like that. Essendon at the time. So it doesn't make sense.
No, it doesn't. So with the Saints, I mean, the way I'm watching it, I think you touched on it. Like the margins aren't massive. You're not getting blown out. You're not. I just think you're going through a bit of a tough patch. You should come out the other end fine. You've got a really good coach who's experienced, defensively minded, and that'll keep you in every game. I think just when you find your ability to win the games and take the game on. I actually tipped you this week against Freo. Bit of a response.
Thank you very much. But yeah, it's an interesting one with Freo, obviously being at home that you might be more inclined to tip St Kilda, but then if you go off form, but then Freo's form isn't crashed on there. They're a bit similar in terms of how they've gone in similar win-loss. I think they've maybe won one more game, if not equal, on points. So it's really even. Is that Marvel? Which again, if it was in Perth, I know people would more heavily choose Freo, but it's going to be an interesting one this week, Terry, too, and obviously we potentially get a few back finally. Your mate or ex-Carlton mate, Paddy Dow's played the last 2 weeks in the twos. Happy to see how he goes. You know what, to be honest, and I've said this before plenty of times actually, I'm more excited to see how Paddy Dow goes more than Liam Henry. I said that in the trade period, and I've said it all the way through to now. I actually like the way he plays. I know his ball use at times, again, was questioned, but he does accumulate a lot of it. But in the VFL, though, he's played the full games too. He's only been getting 20-odd touches, like 19, 20-odd. But at least, though, in those games, in those touches, they've actually been, like, they haven't been hack kicks, they haven't been turned over type kicks. They've actually been, most of them, pretty good.
I think you guys will reap the benefits of Paddy Dow similarly to the way that we reap the benefits of Blake Acres. So Paddy Dow, we played him very early because we had to. We had no, he was the future of the club, and we played all the kids first up. They didn't really go through a development phase in the VFL. Then we started building the list. Then we started putting him in the VFL so we could work on his defensive craft and things like that. What Paddy has is, I actually think, an attribute that the Saints need. He's got his instinct, and I hope it hasn't been coached out of him from Carlton and at the Saints, but his first instinct is to go forward. I think you need a bit of that because it can spark something. He can duck through traffic, he can weave through traffic, and I actually think you'll find a bit of a spark with him in the side. So I hope he gets picked. I wish the best for him. I just think Carlton's midfield, there's just not a spot for him. I think the players there are a bit more dynamic. I mean, he's not going to play in front of Walsh. He's not going to play in front of Chera. And he's not really a type to be your fourth or fifth midfielder. I think he needs to be right at the source of the footy to do his best work.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I see why Carlton got rid of him. I mean, he could have kept him for depth, I suppose. But then again, if he doesn't want to stay, and fair enough for him not wanting to be depth, and like you said, he's realistic. He knows Walsh and Chera and Cripps ahead of him. So unless they're injured, and even if one of them is injured, he's not necessarily locked in. You think he could be, but then you got Akers. So they could always put some other player from another position into his spot. Then they just bring in a different, let's say, a forward or through rotation. He's like, oh, well, there's my spot gone again. So yeah, would you say he's the one that got away? Like in terms of like, if there's a player that over time that's gone, and you're like, they left the club, and you're like, oh, didn't want them going in. Is it Paddy or is it someone else?
I think Paddy had more than enough time to get it done. There's two that I look at, and then I say they're the ones that got away. The first one is obviously Eddie Betts. He ended up coming back to the club, but we didn't get the best of Eddie. We got just before he broke out, and then Zach Tui is the other one. That's really the one that got away.
Yeah, obviously now Tui. I swear he's been managed 3 or 4 times already this year, and Rick Stanley's now topped that, getting managed again this week with 5. Geelong love managing their players every week.
They do. They've got that program in place. They try and look at the season as a marathon. And you know what? It's smart because they win their games early. They've banked their wins, and now they get the opportunity to rest. I mean, they're resting Hawkins
Mitch,
this week. They're resting Mitch Duncan. So, yeah, they got that program in place, and good luck to them.
The funny thing though with them, they've been doing that since round one. It's like they went in and they're going to keep doing it. Now, something that has been disappointing, Terry. I don't know what you feel, but I think it definitely has, and I've made it known a fair bit. Is the umpiring this year, just not in general, not just Carlton games, like as a whole? Because I know people say with Carlton a lot. So in general, Terry, do you think the standard of umpiring has dropped? I think it's dropped significantly. What do you think?
Do I think it's dropped? I think the game gets harder and harder to umpire, and I think we make it harder on them. I think that the fact that they are not full-time employees and studying the art of the game full-time is kind of wild to me. It's just it's such a hard game to officiate, especially when the media find a new angle every week to sort of debate about a rule, and then the pressure for the rule. I mean, we've had this new case of head knock. I think holding the ball, I don't know what's happened to holding the ball, but they've sort of moved away from it a little bit. There's new interpretations that come in every year, and just feels like the game we haven't allowed the game to just settle. We're already talking about changing the interchange cap, or sorry, the sub, and like, does it go back to 5 and 4? Like, there's so many things that change every year. It's hard to just get settled, and I reckon that might be something to do with why the umpiring is the way it is.
That's fair. Yeah, I agree though with the rules chopping and changing. They should just leave things alone. And then I see yesterday they're looking at, it's not from an umpiring point of view, but looking at shortening the quarter lengths or fixing something with the quarter length. I saw that yesterday, and I rolled the eyes in the back and said, do not even bother. Just leave things alone that don't need to be changed. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, they say.
Yeah, they don't. Yeah, some things don't need to be changed. I think some stability in the game would be nice, so we can get settled on the rules, on the length of the game, on the speed of the game. Yeah.
The one thing though, Terry, with the umpiring in general with their rules that I don't like is like they're so inconsistent with their own rules that have been there for a while. Like you mentioned, holding the ball earlier about dropping the ball and that, like they're basic things that have been around for so long, and they just pick and choose which ones they pay and don't. Like, yeah, you can miss a rare one. You can forgive that, I suppose, depending on if it's your team that's copped the wrong side of it. But it's inconsistencies throughout the whole year. There's not particular games, and then at the end of games, one of them involving Carlton with the Freo one. Then you had Adelaide and Essendon with Draper sitting on it and him taking the piss out of it after it because he sat on it. It's like, I think they're costing teams games more this year, or moments that's costing teams an opportunity to win more than ever, I suppose.
Yeah, you don't want a game to be decided by umpiring. Let the players decide the game.
That's why, that's what annoyed me the most, and people will say, I say it with some St Kilda games, I don't say that it's, say, Rob does, but like those two games that come to mind unfortunately involved your mob. On the right side for you, though, with Freo, and then the Adelaide Essendon one, they're the two that I bring up straight away and come to mind. Like on the weekend, Terry, the Geelong Port one, with Jeremy Cameron, how did you feel with that, with Jeremy Cameron staying on and they're talking about they did the test and then the AFL, of course, approved it? But like Aaliyah the year prior had a similar thing, and the Port got fined and scrutinised for it, and Geelong, it got let off. I just don't get, that's another inconsistency. Like the rules they have, they say it was good for Geelong last week, but not for Port last year. And it was the same thing.
Yeah, it was inconsistent. He should have had a test. I think we all saw it. The hard thing is, we all judge the game while we sit in a calm environment. We're at home, but when you get to game time, it's on, the game's in the balance and you're there, you're the club doc. Like there's so many variables, and it's hard to consider what it's like being in the thick of the game, in the heat of battle, compared to when you sit at home during the week and, you can analyze the footage and pretty clearly, like he should have had a test. Like we all saw the footage. It was very clear what had happened. I did find the fact that they didn't get a reprimand. I thought that was a bit silly because that's after the fact. We've seen the footage. He clearly should have had a test. And I do think that part of it should have been made clear. I don't like that Port got reprimanded, but the Cats got the tick of approval.
Yeah, exactly. It just doesn't make sense. I've been saying that Geelong have been looked after, at least from those type of things, a few times. Now, right or wrong, this one I don't think personally. I don't think this was a bad thing when Tom Hawkins used the phone or grabbed the phone out of the crew staff member's hand about the weather forecast, whatever. When they had that lightning, look, I don't think there's nothing wrong with that, but it's a rule apparently. So he knew the rule. They knew the rule. They did it, right or wrong, and they got a warning for that. And I know for a fact, if any other club does something like that this year, they're going to be punished for it, aren't they? So it's like, you can't be giving Geelong a warning for that either. And this one is another trend, which is why I feel Geelong get favoured in certain things, whether it's that type of stuff, umpiring, fixturing, and Chris Scott, for example, again, right or wrong, he'll, at a press conference, and I like when coaches express anger in, fixturing or umpiring and they want to talk about it, but they get in trouble for it, right? They get to please explain or they get fined. And coaches got in trouble this year being asked to please explain, but Chris Scott's bagging the umpires the other week and nothing happened. And he got to meet them this week. I just don't get it.
It's all about the art of communication, and you don't know what I mean. There's all sorts of probably private conversations that go on between coaches in the AFL. I'm sure Chris Scott butters up the league, midweek and gets clarification on things, and there's a lot more that I think goes into it than just what we see in press conferences and on game day.
I'm sure there is. But it's just very interesting that some stories you mentioned like that. Now, Terry, I want to ask you a few things before I let you go, so I do appreciate you coming on. So the mid-season draft, obviously that's in a few weeks' time. Are you a fan of that concept? And now they're going to lead into a mid-season trade period potentially next year.
I am a fan of mid-season draft. Mid-season trade period is fascinating because it's going to be the ultimate test of whether a club can hold it down and stay committed to who's on their list and what's to come. But at the same time, I mean, if you're a contender like Carlton, for example, you lose like a Sam Doherty and a Jack Silvani for the rest of the season. That touch wood, if that were to happen next year and we lose one of the key position players there, and you're in a flag window, of course you're going to do everything you can to win a flag. So it's going to make for very interesting. Well, it's going to be good for content creators, isn't it? We're going to have a lot more to talk about.
Absolutely, yeah. I love the trade period. Sometimes some people would say, and fair enough too. I think I'm more excited, Terry, for the trade period at the end of the year than sometimes the season. Sometimes because if your team's struggling, I mean, if you're not making finals, well, what the hell else is there to look forward to? So I look forward to the trade every year. I love the trade period, and to be honest, I like the idea of it. But the one thing I am interested with mid-season trade period, if they do officially bring it in, which it looks like they will next year, how are they going to do with contracts? Do you get half-year contracts because you're halfway through the year? Because if there's no half-year contracts, like say if you get a 1.5-year extension or whatever, how are you going to pry someone out of the other club when that club will probably have the leverage to go, well, there's still a half a year left, So if someone had that.
Yeah, it's a good question. I guess you have to be sure that you can take on whatever's remaining from their contract. That's a good question. Yeah. I would love to know how they do it.
Absolutely. So you mentioned with Carlton, with Jack Silvani being out long term, I'm pretty sure you got a list spot or two vacant for the mid-season draft.
We've got a couple. We've got a couple, yeah.
Is there any particular, probably not specific names because they're generally just state league players, but is there a particular type of player you would like to look at in that period, or just kind of best available, leave it open? What would you do?
I think Carlton needs another key position. I mean, it's easy to say, but we need another key position defender. I think I've realised if Wiedering doesn't play, we're in trouble. We don't have the cover. At the moment, Sam Durden's on the list. I don't know if there's anyone better than Sam Durden out there. And then we are lacking a third tall forward. That would usually be Jack Silvani. Jack Martin plays that role sort of when he's playing, but I just can't rely on Jack to be there for every game because he gets injured a lot. So I guess maybe if there was a third forward type there, potentially, I think our midfield is okay. So I would probably suggest a defender and a forward. Yeah. There's a few in the reserves that are going really well. I don't mind Ned Cahill. I like the way he goes about it. Ben Ronk potentially, but we'll see.
Yeah, both those guys. I know our Carlton's VFL still, I'm pretty sure, aren't they? So they're both. Ben Ronk is a fascinating name too. When he made his debut for Sydney and kicked 7 goals, I think that was his
Yeah,
debut
good.
game. Yeah, I just don't know how you can go from that to being cut within 2 years.
Yeah, it's a mystery. I mean, if there's I don't know if there'd be more than that, like a handful. I mean, how many people do you think have kicked 7 in a game of footy? I mean, like 50 history of the game, 100? I don't know.
Yeah, it's a world's biggest mystery, or AFL's biggest mystery, one of them anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, with the you mentioned with the mid-season, and St Kilda's now got a list spot open, and I feel like I mean, what's the Saints' biggest issue? It's ball use, so they could go down to any position, I guess. I think key defenders and that we're fine. Obviously, with Wilkie battles in career best form and a free agent, I'm a little bit concerned if he. I would be concerned if he leaves because he's obviously been terrific for us, and he's a good swing man too. Obviously, he could couple of goals on the weekend. I feel like though it's probably the obvious answer is the midfield needs help, but Crouch, as I said with the injuries, Terry, a lot of those have been mids. Crouch and Dow are mids. Henry floats through there. Wood floats through there and plays wing. Like if you had them, I might not be saying that, but I think midfield is probably the clearest spot we need help in, inside mids mainly.
Yeah, fair. Need some help for Jack Steele.
That's right, and hopefully
Oh,
Crouch.
why don't you guys put Mitch Owens on the ball? I feel like he could do it.
Mm. You know what? I heard you guys mention. Someone mentioned Mitch. I think Jake might have mentioned it recently. I don't know if he's got the skills for it either, to be honest, because Mitch and I've met him before, but he's ball use set shots mainly. He holds it weird, but then again, some players hold the ball weird, and it worked from Ahmed Saad. I don't know if you remember him. He had that long ball drop. People could get a drink while he was lining up. Great kick, and then Josh Kennedy from the Eagles obviously had the stutter step, and a few other players got their things. Max King wobbles the ball around, throws it around. But yeah, that's an interesting one. Mitch, they've tried it a little bit. They should try it a little bit more, I guess. But if he can fix he's a strong player. He's played that backup ruck role, so he's kind of had a little bit in there. He's sometimes when Rowe's been the starting ruck in that contest, he's been in the mid a little bit, not too much. If he can fix his kicking up, Terry, I think that could work.
Yeah, interesting.
I think that's one of his worst things. All right, so the last one I got for you, unless you got something for me, so I do appreciate you coming on. So, where do you want this channel to go for yourself, Terry? Where would you like to go, say in a few years' time or right now?
It's a really good question because I think a lot of us will look at, or I don't know how you look at yours, but I mean, it can be really easy to say, I want X amount of subscribers or an average, viewership of 10,000 people or things like that. But I think what I've learned about life is if you get to, I mean, we all set our goals and then a funny thing happens when you reach them, life goes on, then it's like, oh, okay, there's this almost an emptiness of, I don't have something to look forward to. So for me, I just want to live, I really break it down as simple as this. If I could live a life where I watch Carlton and talk about Carlton, that's what I would do with my life. And so as long as I can do that and live and, be healthy, I think that's important. So I'm really enjoying and embracing the journey as opposed to getting too caught up. Like, I think for me, obviously, I just want to keep growing. I just want to keep improving. But I am enjoying the journey a lot more than what I used to. I think at the beginning, you obviously focus on the outcomes because you don't know if you can turn content into a career. It hadn't been done much before, especially in the footy space. So I think now that I'm starting to experience that, it's now just about appreciating what has happened and just enjoying. I wasn't sure if this would work. I wasn't sure if it would get to where it is today. I was confident because I sort of, you back yourself in, but yeah. So I think that I've given a long answer to a really short answer, but yeah, just enjoying the journey.
That's for true. And yeah, with me, I want to obviously keep building the guests I've had on. I've had yourself on. I was on Pommy's a few years back. So around 2 years. Obviously, Pommy's a ripper. Still chat to him a little bit. Obviously, you have him on sometimes the rotating guests in your own segments with him as well. But yeah, and I've had. Has Jake ever mentioned? He doesn't like saying this when I see him. That I beat him and Cardi in a goal comp. Did they ever bring that up? Because I know Cardi doesn't like to bring it up.
No, they don't bring it up, but I think the footage is out there.
Oh, it's out there. It's funny. They both I was in the same boat as them. Like, it was just a random spur of the moment. We're at the Saints Open training, and we had floated it a few weeks prior. Like, oh, if we're out there, we should have a kicking. And nothing really eventuated off. Even Cardi had a footy with him. We were all there. We had a bit of time to kill, and like, they actually brought it. One of them brought it up. Oh, let's have a kick and have a comp. I'm like, all right, you know. And then after, it's like, oh, we weren't prepared. Neither was I, but I won. So that's why they say that.
Why don't you and I do a goal kicking comp?
Absolutely, I can do that. And Icon Park's very easy to get to. I love that ground too, and I've been there a few times with the AFLW side of things. But yeah, we'll see. But yeah, from the channel, Terry too, I'd love to, keep building the guests I've been on. Some people seem to forget that I had Craig McRae on twice. I know it wasn't this year; it was 2022 and one, but when I started in 2021, but publicly at least. But yeah, names like that I've had on. Andy Brayshaw. Who else? Xavier Dersma, Zane Dersma. Yeah, I did. Yeah, that was a little chat at the Footy Fest, which was awesome. I've had the Dersma on there, terrific. And then, yeah, a lot of top draft picks. Mateus Filippo, obviously, he's my favourite player at St Kilda too, so it was great to get him on twice. I had Ruben Chinby, Josh Weddle. I had Ollie Hollands on in his draft year as well. But yeah, to continue growing names like that, I've expanded this year to not just doing AFL, or not just this year, last year, started bringing AFLW in, and I'm not regretting that. I love doing that. I've had, some of the best people I've had on have been from the AFLW side of things. Had state leagues from VFL to VFLW, Waffle W when I went to Perth, and a mega goal king challenge too, Terry. 17 of the girls in AFLW playing 15 Waffle W girls and myself. Yeah, and that was awesome. And yeah, hopefully keep growing that and go from there.
So for you, yeah, I think, what do you want to do? I mean, you just want to keep building your experience and building the portfolio and just enjoying the journey, or do you have a specific goal in mind?
Yeah, I will. Yeah, I do want to keep doing what I've done now and get more at a consistent basis at all levels as well. Like, it's always all these hurdles, Terry, with clubs, allowing it and timing and everything like that. And I'm sure Jake said in the past he's experienced some of that as well with Saints. But I like to do all clubs. I don't want to just be stuck to St Kilda. I mean, you get some luck with some clubs. Some, just ask the individual themselves and they want to come on, perfect. But yeah, I would love to expand that. And another ultimate goal, I would like to somehow do what I'm doing now with players on a consistent basis through, say, being at a club. Again, if it's St Kilda, well, that'd be awesome. But if it's not, if it's someone else, I don't care if it's Carlton, for example, or Melbourne. Yeah, something like that where you kind of link the two together where you're with them, but you're also allowed to still do your own channel as well. And probably being with them, more involved, that you're more likely to get a regular amount of players from that particular club as well. Something like that.
I like it. Yeah, very good.
Very good. Terry, I do really appreciate coming on. Good luck against the Swans this week, and I really do appreciate coming on.
Yeah, mate. Thanks for inviting me, and good to do our first bit of content together. And yeah, good luck with everything. Speak soon.
Thank you. You too.